Hello. In a previous lesson, we learned how to write linear systems from paragraphs, and now that those are written, we want to follow through and to solve. So here's a couple of examples. Earlier, we showed that if the perimeter of a rectangle is 14 and the length is 3 centimeters longer than the width, that we can end up with a system that looks like this. And now, all we have to do is graph it, so we can solve graphically. This is using the intercept method, and here I just let L equals 0, W equals 7, let W equals 0, L would equal 7. So that was, I didn't have to show all the work for that because it's pretty self-explanatory. So I simply listed the two intercepts, the two easiest solutions to find for this equation, and I plot them on a graph. Also very easy to draw that line. And then the other one, I have to be very careful here. I usually go alphabetical order for the x and y axis. So we're going to let the x-axis be L and the y-axis be W. So in my equation, I want y equals mx plus b. So that's to make sure I'm doing this right. Then I find the slope is 1 and the y-intercept is -3. So I simply find the y-intercept. And instead of going up 1 over 1, I go up 3 over 3 to get the x-intercept, and I label all of my points. And I use the graph to gauge the solution. It seems like x equals 5, y equals 2, that is L and W, is reasonable. Not to mention, if we say 5 plus 2 equals 7, and 2 plus 3 equals 5. It's got to be the answer. So, this is an algebra class. We might as well learn how to do this algebraically. We're going to use the substitution method. Basically, I'm going to take the equation L plus W equals 7, and L has been showed to be equal to W plus 3, so here where I see this L, I will replace it with W plus 3, because since these are the same, I can send, instead of saying L, I'll say W plus 3 plus W equals 7, and the rest is algebra 1. There I proved that the width is going to be 2, and if the length is 3 centimeters longer, then the length has to be 5 centimeters. So I answer the question. In context, the length is 5 centimeters and the width is 2 centimeters. Now, as for checking, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that this is absolutely correct, but in terms of problem-solving strategies, instead of using the equations to check, I'm going to verify that the perimeter of the rectangle that we specified is indeed 14, and again, just write down for posterity, the length is clearly 3 centimeters more than the width. So both of the conditions are met. I have the correct solution. So go back to the paragraph, not the equations, and make sure that your answer works. Again, we worked on the cheese problem earlier. We ended up with the system in the purple box. Grams of cheese plus grams of cheese should add up to 30 grams total. And this one started off, started off with percentages. 45% of the cheese is fat grams, 20% of the other cheese is fat grams, which should give us 30% of a 30-gram mixture of fat, in other words, 9 grams of fat. So once again, we should see in dimensional analysis, grams, grams, grams. Anyway, once all of that is done, we've stripped away all of the extraneous things, and we can now just focus on solving. That's all we have to do is look at this, excuse me, and solve it using all the algebraic techniques that we've had. Then we go back and see if this actually matches what we want it to. First, graphically, and I write down that this is my graphical data here, and once again I can easily find the x and y intercepts for that equation. For this one, I show my work. Letting x equal 0 means y is 45. Letting y equal 0 means that x would have to equal 20. So I simply plot using a ruler to set a scale that's reasonable. I need to go up to 45, so I set a scale that goes up to 45 in both cases. And it appears as though the lines are going to intersect at 12:8, and that's just eyeballing it. It looks pretty reasonable, especially since 12 plus 18 does in fact equal 30. So I'm pretty sure I have the solution, but once again, it's an algebra class, so I'm going to do some algebra. In this case, once again, I'm going to use the substitution method because the first equation is so easy to solve for y or x. I substitute into the y value. Instead of writing y, I write 30 minus x. The rest is algebra 1. Collect like terms, bring the 120 over, and x equals 12. 12 plus y equals 30 means y has to equal 18. So all of that is really straightforward. It's just like the algebra we learned prior. Again, I go back to the paragraph though this time, and we say 12 grams of fat, or 12 grams of 45% fatty cheese, and 18 grams of 20% fatty cheese should equal 30 grams. So that checks out, obviously. And then what I did was I calculated 45% of 12. This goes back to, like, I think 5th grade math or something, maybe 6th grade. 45% of 12. I just did a little bit of subdivisions, so it makes the calculations easier. I got 5 2/5 fat grams of, so basically if we just had the 12 grams of the fattier cheese, that would produce 5 2/5 or 5.4 grams of fat from that amount of cheese. The 18 grams then at 20% is going to produce 3 3/5 fat grams, and when I add them all up, that's 9 fat grams, which is how many I was supposed to have. 30% of 30 grams is 9, and that matches. So once again, I go back to the context and make sure my answer makes sense there rather than going back to the equations. The last problem deals with the last on the problem set, number 21. A little bit different than the standard systems kind of question, but it's easier to write the system, harder to interpret maybe what's being said. But we have two statements made by either a liar or a truth teller, and the statements amount to first number and second number pair. The text, if you see the underlined, says that 3 times the first number and 6 times the second number. If I do that, then what does it say? It says you should add them together. It'll produce a sum of 12. So that's just basically add together and get a sum of 12. Second statement says if we take the first number and add it to twice the second number, the sum is going to be 5. I have 3 ways to prove that the speaker is a liar. Once again, in terms of mathematics, if you have the answer to the question and you're taking a multiple choice ACT test, you won't have to do all of this. But really what we're trying to do is explore ways of talking mathematically, ways of using our tools of mathematics. This is a simplistic problem, but everything we're learning can be added layers of complexity. Everything that we're learning can be developed further as we learn more about the complexities that exist in our world. So my point is, I know this guy's a liar just from looking at those equations, but I want to make an argument, or 3 arguments, that'll prove this to be true. My first argument comes from simplifying the first equation. When I divide both sides by 3, I end up with the first equation being 1a plus 2b equals 5. But I just learned from the second equation that 1a plus 2b has to equal 4. These 2 numbers on the left-hand side are the same. These 2 numbers are not the same. This is no way to be true. This can't be true just by using logic. It's called inspection. Now I can form a graphical argument. So once again, I find the x and y intercepts. There's the y-intercept for the first equation. There's the x-intercept for the first equation. And the y-intercept and x-intercept. Put together my graph, plotting those intercepts, and I find there is no intersection. These lines are in fact parallel. I could even see that if we go 2.5 to 5 is a negative 1/2 slope, and 2 to 4 is also a negative 1/2 slope. So there's proof of parallelism. Finally, if I use an algebraic approach, if I tried solving this system using the elimination method, I'm going to multiply both sides by -1 of the second equation, which produces a system which now looks like this. When I subtract, sorry, let me go back a little bit. I bumped a thing there. When I subtract these, I get 0a, I also get 0b, and I get -1, which means 0 is supposed to equal -1. This is not possible. This is certainly a liar. So once again, the point is I could have determined this guy was a liar just from looking at these equations. I could tell that they're going to be parallel lines. I can tell that this isn't possible. But if I wanted to make a case, if I was a lawyer, for example, I would say I present the evidence number 1, evidence number 2, and evidence number 3 that this person is most certainly a liar. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have a great day.